And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sports Shorts Daily. Ronnie Rance alongside Tommy Krysan. TK coming to you on this Monday morning from Court Street Cafe in downtown Port Allen, presented by LeBear's Casino, and I'm brought to you by the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Today on Sports Shorts Daily, we're going to talk a lot of LSU baseball, SEC standings, national RPI polls. We'll get into all that as LSU wins another series. It wasn't pretty, no style points, but they take care of business, knock off Kentucky at home, and win 2 out of 3. On the other side, you've got um, some national stories to go around. Obviously, the NBA playoffs are underway. Pelicans are out. Lakers actually win their first game of the series, which I think all of us are probably pulling against them. We'll talk a little bit about that. Some other news, spring game for LSU football is this Saturday at 2 p.m. It'll actually be the same time that LSU plays Ole Miss in game 2 of their series, which will both be at 2 o'clock. The Saturday game for LSU Ole Miss will actually be on ESPN2. That's a national game because obviously that schedule was put out when Ole Miss was defending national champs and everybody thought they were going to be pretty good. Instead, they're 3-12. So, Tommy, I want to get your reaction first off to LSU baseball this past weekend. The Tigers take 2 out of 3. They had to come from behind to do so.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It wasn't pretty, wasn't smooth, wasn't like it was maybe a little nerve wracking on a lot of the fans. But bottom line is they got it done. I think the big story is the injury to Dugas and when does he return? Because he's been such a key part, especially offensively for LSU. Pitching had its moments where it was pretty good, but it had its moments when it was questionable. Kentucky's a good team. Don't go wrong. As you said on Sports Shorts Radio Saturday, a couple of weeks ago, their RPI was number 1 in the country. So they're a good team. They played a tough non-conference schedule, and LSU found a way to get it done. I think Kentucky's well coached. They put a lot of guys in motion. They're not afraid to bunt, steal, hit and run, that whole bit. So they're going to be in the postseason. There's no question about that. But bottom line is you won another series, 5 series, and you've won them all. With Carolina, they got the split with South Carolina because you didn't play game 3. But now we got Raging Cajuns Tuesday night at the box, and then you add Ole Miss, who's struggling big time, right? Defending College World Series champs. I'll say it. You got to go get all 3 from Ole Miss. Everything's got to work: pitching, hitting, defense, base running, the timely hitting, the bullpen, starters. Everything's got to work, and you got to go get all 3 from Ole Miss to propel yourself into the second half of the SEC schedule.
Well, let's show you why we say that. Go ahead and put up the SEC standings. These are the latest standings. We're literally halfway through the 30-game SEC schedule. Most teams have played 15 games. Obviously, you remember LSU, South Carolina didn't get their game 3 in. If you take a look at the standings, you see LSU over on the left side in the West. They are a couple games behind Arkansas. Arkansas, Dave Van Horn. Remember, LSU beat Arkansas in that series. They lost the opener. That one went extra innings, and then they won games 2 and 3. LSU finds themselves 9-5. No one else in the West has a winning record in the SEC. So the strength this year is clearly in the East. Look at Vanderbilt, 13-2, kind of quietly going about their business. Everybody's talking about LSU, Kentucky, South Carolina's hot start. Vandy just kind of trudging along, 13-2. Vandy had a very poor non-conference start to their season, but they had a very difficult schedule where LSU had a very easy one. Now that's paying dividends. Florida, very good team going into the season, lots of pitching. They're off to an excellent start as well. They're 11-4. There's South Carolina, the nice turnaround surprise. Kentucky is in 4th at 10-5, but currently, and even as of today, Kentucky is number 1 in the NCAA RPI standings. That's based on strength of schedule and the games that they won against teams ranked in the top 20 and 30 and all that stuff. So Kentucky's still ranked very high in the standings. And then you see Missouri, Tennessee, Georgia. Tennessee, the biggest shocker. They are 5-10. They were a team expected to compete for a national.
Yeah, the 3 things that jump.
Go ahead, TK.
The 3 things that jump out at me when we look at the SEC standards: Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee. No one thought back in mid-February that they would be where they're at in these standards for lots of reasons, but they are. So that's what it is.
Well, here's the thing, Tommy, is that, Ole Miss, again, all of us that played or coached, I played for Mike Bianco. He was an assistant my last year at LSU. I knew Mike prior to ever coming to LSU. Obviously, he was a great player, and then he was at Jim Wells at Northwestern State, who I had a good relationship with a lot of their teammates. So, and I've known Mike for years, and so I'm a big Mike Bianco fan. And it's not. If you listen to this show, you know that before they hired Jay Johnson, I wanted Mike Bianco to be the head coach. Last year, I thought May 1st, if you'd have put a gun to my head, I thought May 1st that they were going to fire Mike Bianco as the head coach at Ole Miss. Okay. There was, and I'm not the only one who thought that. People who are even closer to the situation that had spoke to the athletic director thought the same thing. And then naturally, they had the amazing May-June turnaround. It started with LSU, beating LSU in Baton Rouge. And they turned around their season and they ended up winning the national championship. And I was so happy for him because I knew what a great job he did at Ole Miss. If you knew what Ole Miss baseball was prior to Mike Bianco arriving there, you would appreciate the turnaround even more over the last 20 years. But they've had a great program. They have one of the best atmospheres in college baseball. And they just weren't getting that payoff in the postseason. After they got the many super regionals, only went to Omaha once. So it was a strange deal for them. And so I was very glad that they won the national championship. I was glad for him. He signed an extension, thought the pressure would get off his back a little bit. And then here we are this year. The pitching has been an issue. They have an ERA over 5.5 as a staff. Their walk numbers and their strikeout numbers are not that bad. I was talking to Todd Walker about this yesterday, the day before. They have just a little bit more than a strikeout per inning pitched. They have around a walk every other inning. So they have basically about a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio as a staff. That's not terrible. But for whatever reason, and their batting average against is pretty standard. So for whatever reason, it's just not happening. They're falling behind hitters 2-0 a lot, 2-1, 3-1 a lot, and they're letting that leadoff guy get on. And if you saw the Kentucky series, if that leadoff batter gets on, he comes around. In the Kentucky series, Tommy, every single time Kentucky got the leadoff batter on base, they scored this past weekend against LSU. I don't know that I've ever seen that. So it hasn't been happening for Ole Miss. They find themselves 3-12, and now Mike's back on the hot seat. Now he's clearly not going to get canned this year, a year removed from winning a national championship and a year removed from signing an extension. But here he is back to people questioning if he's a good coach or not. And I feel for him. They lost 2 out of 3 this past weekend to Mississippi State. They lost a 1-run game on Saturday, and then they lost a 2-run game on Sunday. They won on Friday. So it was a coin flip series against Mississippi State, who's not having a good year either. They only have 5 wins. So you're right, Tommy. LSU goes into Ole Miss. They've got to obviously win 2 out of 3. If they can sweep, it probably puts them back into the race to try to get back in there to try to maybe make a run at winning the SEC standings. The SEC, as their schedule will soften up a little bit in the second half of the year.
Yeah, and look, Mike Bianco is a great coach. He'll get it figured out. I believe that. I mean, he'll know where the holes are in the roster, and then through the portal and NIL and everything else going on. I truly think he'll figure it out, and Ole Miss will be back in. Now, keep in mind, next year, 2024. You're going to have the no East and West standings. They're just going to put everybody in there. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But Mike Bianco, he'll figure it out. I'm pretty sure he will.
I think the
year after. Yeah.
The schedule coming up for LSU, the second half of their schedule in the SEC. Of course, they've got Alabama, they've got Auburn, they've got Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and then one more team that I'm escaping. Maybe you can look at the schedule, Tommy. I can't on my phone. But those 4 teams all have losing records in the SEC halfway through the season. So
they got Ole Miss, Bama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and then they will close with Georgia in Georgia.
Okay, so all 5 of their series the second half of the year against teams that are below 500 in the SEC. So that's a big deal. So it's an opportunity for LSU to to make a run and kind of get right. Like we thought they would probably be 10-5 at worst right now, maybe 11-4. Instead, they find themselves 9-5, and I'm not so sure if they play that third game in South Carolina, they win it per se. South Carolina was undefeated at home. It took a miracle Dugas deal to win a game, and LSU was out of pitching in Game 3. But if LSU on paper should be able to go at least 10-5 the rest of the way, that would put them at 19 wins on the season. Now, I don't know if that's enough to win the West or even the SEC standings based off the hot starts of Arkansas and Vanderbilt and others. But if LSU can be a little bit better than that, if they can be 11-4, Tommy, that would put them at 20 wins. And going into the year, we said 20 wins would probably win you the West and the SEC overall. So it's going to be a little bit of a sprint for LSU. Down the stretch, they have a number 3 RPI. I don't know what the latest polls are. Did you see any polls or anything that came out yesterday?
They're still number 1 across the board.
Yeah, which is kind of, that's kind of a little bit based on reputation. I think people, if they dug in, I think if the sports writers dug in and saw the problems that they have outside of Skeens pitching on the mound, maybe they wouldn't be number 1 in the country. I mean, if you look at what Vanderbilt's doing in the league and you look at what Arkansas has been, LSU outside of Paul Skeens pitching, Tommy, whenever he's not pitching against a good team, this is it's a coin flip. I mean, against the better teams in the league, the Vanderbilts, the Kentuckys, the Arkansas, the Floridas. I mean, when you don't have Paul Skeens on the mound, even with that lineup, it's probably a coin flip game.
I gotta agree with you at this point, and I'm like you. If the people dug in a little bit, who are ranking, D1 baseball and all the other polls, you might see that LSU a shaky number 1 might be the word, but as you said, the second half of the SEC schedule is softer than the first half. No question about that. Throw in some midweek games against some good teams. You got the Raging Cajuns. You got Southeastern coming up down the road. So, they got to get it figured out. I mean, and I think Jay Johnson will.
All right, so Raging Cajuns this Tuesday will be taking on LSU in Baton Rouge. Lynn and I will be on the ESPN Plus, SEC Plus call on Tuesday night. Going back to LSU on Sunday, Collins came out of the pen, the Arizona transfer in his second year, came over with Jay Johnson. I mean, he rescued this team. He was a guy who got off to an awful start to the season. The first few outings has gotten better and better. And if Collins doesn't do what he does on Sunday and go 2 1/3, 2 2/3, and not allow anything, I don't think LSU wins. And so that was a giant deal for him to pitch as well as he did in relief. Thatcher Hurd, another bad outing. That's now 6 bad outings this year. I thought Christian Little did his job. Jay Johnson's plan going into Sunday and the rest of the year is, hey, we've got to get 6 innings between Little and Hurd the rest of the year. And he didn't quite get that, but he got 3 great innings out of Christian Little. Now, unfortunately, he fell off the cliff in the 4th inning, but he had 3 fantastic innings by Christian Little. Hopefully that gives him some confidence to repeat that, but they've got to figure out something with Thatcher Hurd, Tommy. It's bizarre how things have unraveled for that young man. I feel for him.
Well, and also Jay Johnson's going to meet with the media at 12:30 today, so we'll see if there's any injury updates on any of the guys, Ackenhausen, Edwards, Dugas, whatever you want to do. So that's kind of important right now too. They can get some guys back. But you're right, Collins stepped up. That's what it takes. Somebody's got to step up out of the bullpen. Somebody's got to step up at the plate, get that timely hit. So that's what's in front of LSU.
It looks as if Edwards is done for the year.
Really? Okay.
And, from everything I'm hearing and talking with, it looks like he's done for the year and probably won't ever pitch at LSU again because he's going to get drafted. But Shores is the one that's really a little bit up in the air. Coin flip could go either way. Got TBD kind of thing. And then Ackenhausen, they think he's going to be back this weekend. They're optimistic that he'll be back this weekend. Did you see Javen Coleman got up twice over the weekend to start warming up? That was a shocker. The lefty who's been out for a year. Um, so there's your report. And Dugas verbally said that he thought he would play this weekend. He said that over the weekend to numerous people. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get a little bit of an update, but Jay plays everything close to the vest. So I don't think he's going to be super transparent unless the player is willing to be transparent. And I know that with the pitchers, they're trying to be as optimistic as possible and let the pitchers kind of make that finalization. But in Edwards' case, it doesn't look like he'll be back. Shores is still up in the air, and Ackenhausen is kind of look for him maybe this week.
Well, we got a question from Rachel. What's our thoughts on Riley Cooper?
Riley Cooper is not as good as he was a year ago. He's going to have a super valuable role for LSU down the stretch because he can start a game in a pinch. He can go 4 innings if you need him to. He can get 2 outs if you need him to. So he's a super valuable guy for LSU. I don't understand what's happened and with him. And quite frankly, I think I'm one of the founding members of the Hefty Lefty Club at LSU. Back in the early 90s at 6'5", 270 pounds, I feel like I can talk on Hefty Lefties. And it's I don't in this day and age of Monjuro and strength coaches and weight lifters and nutritionists that we have and all that stuff from the Seahawks, like what's going on? Like why are we struggling in that regard? And why is it not a part of emphasis? You know what I mean? Like it's getting worse instead of better. So that's and I do believe that conditioning it matters when it comes to pitching. It matters in mechanics. It matters in endurance. It matters in so many things. And we've had a certain, pitchers, Tommy, for 150 years were Nigerian marathon runners who also threw every couple days. As a pitcher, you run more than you actually pitch. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
When you were in college, it was the same way. And part of that is they just don't know what to do with you. They're just like, well, just take off and go run. That's part of it.
Go run some foul poles,
Right.
Or go run to the other end of campus and come back.
Right.
That was our famous thing. Of course, then I would just duck in the library because I knew they weren't going to look for me there.
Yeah, and so I'm just curious as to what the plan is, why it's different than everywhere else in the world. But no, Riley Cooper's a vital part of this team. And again, outside of Garrett Edwards, who got better from a year ago, I don't think any other pitchers that were on the staff have gotten better from a year ago. Some have stayed the same, some have gotten worse. But credit Garrett Edwards tremendously and the job Wes Johnson did with him because he, unfortunately got hurt. If not, he would have probably moved into maybe much higher draft pick than we ever thought. But yeah, a lot of the guys haven't gotten better. Now, obviously, some transfers have come in and helped, and obviously, Skeens is Skeens. But look, it's going to be interesting down the stretch. Can Collins repeat what he did? Can Hurd get it turned around? It's important for Jay to know what he's going to get when he puts those guys on the mound. If all we're going to get is Christian Little for 3 innings, that's fine. He knows that, and he knows that, okay, 3. But if we're hoping for 5 and he only gives you 3, that's a problem. If we need 5 out of Thatcher Hurd and he can only give you 2, that's a problem. So the most important thing for a baseball coach is to know what he's going to get when he puts guys in the game and can then manage that.
I agree. And Cooper is valuable. He can throw back-to-back days also to add to what you had said. And, hey, the Raging Cajuns are playing good baseball this year. They got a good team, so – it's going to be a challenge tomorrow night for them to go ahead and get things done on the mound and, of course, hit the ball.
LSU back to a Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule, so they'll get a couple extra days rest. They played back-to-back Thursday, Friday, Saturday schedules in the SEC. We move on, Tommy. LSU women's gymnastics. They made it to the Final Four. They lost in the national championship on Saturday. They finished 4th overall in the country, which was probably a lot higher than we thought they would be just a month ago with the injuries and whatnot they had. Oklahoma, once again, back-to-back national championships. I think it's their 3rd or 4th in the last, 5 or 6 years, whatever it is.
It's like 7 and 9 years, something like that.
Yeah, something crazy, man.
And by the way, their softball team is expected. They're the heavy favorite to win softball this year.
What else we got in the world of sports?
Well, we got spring football, the spring games, 2:00 Saturday. for those people, a lot of people like to go to the spring football game, and it's going to be almost like a fancy practice, and they're going to have different rules and scoring systems. It's not going to look like a football game that you see in the fall, but it'll be a chance to see Jaden Daniels and many of the other guys. They've got a few injuries at the safety position and the running back position. And then there's scouring the for more, and I get.
Can you hear me, Tommy? Okay.
Yeah, we good. Yeah, I just bounced
Okay.
back.
All right, you
Yeah,
cut
I
out a little
bounced
bit
out
on
for
me.
a second. Yeah, but we're good. All right. Yeah, so spring football. It's Saturday at 2:00 in Tiger Stadium. It'll be on the SEC Network app plus the Plus app. I don't know who's announcing it, but you can either go to Tiger Stadium. Weather's supposed to be beautiful this weekend, or you can check it out.
A lot of people don't go to the spring game at LSU, which is weird because they support everything else so crazy, whether it be gymnastics, women's basketball, baseball, football, tailgating, you name it. But it's never been the thing to do. It's never been the big thing. Maybe they'll turn it around. I don't know. I think if they ever made it a real game or something, it would probably be a little bit more. But, some colleges will do, 30, 40,000 for their spring game. LSU struggles to do probably 15 at most. But this weekend's going to be interesting. I know that talking to the media that Brian Kelly's been very close to the vest with how he's covered, how he's let the media cover LSU football. He has not given them as much access as he did last spring, where they could be in there recording a lot more, seeing a lot more. This year it's been much more toned down, and when they're in there, shorter period of time, less access. So I don't know if that was just a year thing to try to earn favor. And now that he won, it's back to the old Gestapo ways, or if there's something special they got going on over there that he's trying to hide. But everybody wants to see Nussmeier and Daniels, and we all expect that it's going to be Jaden Daniels as the starting quarterback and to be the guy again. The question is has Nussmeier improved enough to really push Daniels, or to make it so that there's a package in there, much like Tommy Hodson did with who was the backup quarterback when Hodson was
Mickey Guidry.
Yeah, Mickey Guidry, where even as good as Hodson was, there was always a few series a game where Guidry played.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, Brian Kelly did that at Notre Dame. There were a couple of years when he would jump a guy in for a package, depending on the field position, down and distance, all that kind of stuff. And Lane Kiffin's pretty good at that too. So we'll see if that becomes something for LSU. But again, it's the spring game. Jaden Daniels is the number one guy. Speaking of college football quarterbacks, Texas announced their starting quarterback for the season, and it's not Arch Manning. It's Quinn Ewers, the guy that played a bunch of games last year. And I'll go back to my statement. If his last name wasn't Manning, he'd be in Thibodeau or Hammond or Lake Charles. So, and if you looked at his spring numbers, like 5 out of 18, threw some very poor passes according to the report I wrote. But again, he's a freshman. And, Peyton Manning's first year in the NFL was not good. And, of course, Hall of Famer and Super Bowl. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to follow that thing with Arch Manning. But the Sarkisian, the head coach, after their spring game said, Ewers is the number one guy.
What's interesting about that is that much like Jamie Howard, when Walker Howard was at LSU, he wanted him to redshirt his freshman year. He did not want him to burn a year of eligibility, learning or not quite ready and all that. I wonder if Arch Manning and the Manning family feel the same way. Like, hey, he's loving college. He's making an adjustment. Hey, it's okay. I mean, there's plenty of examples these days of quarterbacks being taken first and second in the draft that are 22, 23, 24 years old. So that age thing doesn't really matter. It's about, can you play or not? And so, and his quarterbacks are playing to their 40s now. So in his case, it may be, hey, let's take the pressure off of him. Let's let him get his 4 games and mop up duty, because you can play 4 before you go against your redshirt year. And then let him just redshirt and save his years for the future.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of time to develop and make progress and all that. And it might be the best thing for him to learn and sit back and look and keep working hard. That's all he can do, because if they call his name, he's got to be ready.
By the way, a rule change in the NCAA, which is a big one that you pointed out to me before the show.
Yeah, they're starting July 1. The NCAA has lifted the 5 visit ban for college football. You could only go on 5 official recruiting trips. Now, an official recruiting trip, the school can pay for a couple of nights to the hotel for the player and a family member or two. You can spend X amount of money entertaining them, all that good stuff. Now it's going to be unlimited visits, unlimited. So you're going to have recruits and prospects. And I think this is in part due of a consequence from the NIL because so many teams now are just grabbing guys out of the portal and not looking as hard as that second level of incoming freshmen, not the 5-star guys. Those are going to get signed anyway. But those 4 and 3-star guys, now you can take more visits to maybe find a fit or find a school that wants you. Unlimited visits. That's I think a consequence of the portal, and we'll see how it goes. But it's good for the athletes. They can take more trips if need be. And I don't know that all of them are going to take 12 trips, but there'll be a group of athletes that'll want more than 5. So, hey, something for the student athlete. How you like that?
I would think that also that rule is more than just football. I would think that if you're going to do that, it's probably all sports.
Yeah, they can't put it. You're right. I mentioned football, but we'll get more info on that.
That's a huge thing. That's why it's big. Okay, so for example, since when you only have 5, most of the time they took those 5 in December and January. So if you're an in-state kid, let's say you're a kid that's a 3-4 hour drive most from Baton Rouge, okay, and you're a big-time recruit. A lot of times those players would be at multiple games. I mean, they would be at multiple games throughout the year. And I don't know all the rules because the rules have changed. The windows of when you can take official visits and not, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not quite 100% sure. It's not what I do. I don't have a paid site for that. Okay, it's not my world. Okay, we can ask Mike Scarborough or somebody else. But the thing is that I would think if official visits can be taken outside of a short window, then that means that you're going to get less of those unofficial visits and more of the officials. So instead of having that player on your campus for every freaking home game just about, and then take an official visit in January, you may have him on for 1 or 2 games while he goes off and pops around to other schools. So it's going to make it more competitive. And look, there's going to be these the players, the big time players, that are going to have offers from everybody. They're going to be every chance they get. They're going to be taking an official visit somewhere, in the United States because they're going to roll out the red carpet for them. And so that's an interesting rule. It's going to make it even harder to recruit players. Is what it's going to do. Tommy, tell us about Court Street Cafe before we get out of here.
Well, it's Monday in Louisiana. That means red beans and rice with a fried chicken breast here at Court Street Cafe. That's the lunch special. Lunch specials every day, dinner specials. Saturday, you got crawfish and live music and steak night. A lot of good things happening. And they do a real good job posting everything on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with Court Street Cafe, Port Allen, 805 Court Street in Port Allen. Just a couple of minutes over the Mississippi River Bridge, real close to downtown Baton Rouge if you're looking for something different for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And, of course, their big Sunday brunch was a big hit yesterday. Court Street Cafe in Port Allen.
All right, for Tommy Krysan and Ronnie Rance, please like and share this video. We'll be back with you on Wednesday at around 10 a.m. Be back for more Sports Shorts Daily then. Until then, everybody have a great one. Thanks for watching.